Welcome to Prep Talk. This is Chris Park and my partner Marvin Hammerschmith. This is the latest edition of Prep Talk, the one and only internet-based radio broadcast dedicated to high school sports in Eugene, Oregon. Marv, we've got a full show on playoff football, don't we? Where do we start?
Wow, this is the special playoff edition. We're going to review last week's games. We're going to have two, not one, but two interviews today.
That's right, two interviews.
Yes, Churchill coach Darrell Mel and Elmira coach Jason Hattie. We're going to talk about the Eugene area schools that were in the playoffs and some of the 3A and 2A teams were playing their last regular season game last week.
Yeah, we do have a full show. We've got a lot of teams still playing in the area. We lost a few teams, unfortunately, but not necessarily in the Lane County area, but still Eugene, Springfield area. We picked up, Oakland and Elkton and Monroe and Harrisburg. So lots of teams playing. I'll go ahead and start with the Thurston play-in game. Beaverton 49, Thurston 28. Unfortunately for Thurston, they started out the way they've started out a few games. Fumbles and getting behind early on. They were down 28-0 early on in the second quarter. They did get it back to 28-21 in the third quarter, but just not enough. Beaverton also had a fumble recovery returned for a touchdown. So turnovers and a slow start for Thurston unfortunately concludes their season.
Well, that's tough for Thurston. It does sound like they gave it everything they had coming back there. Making it a close game, but this time of year, we've talked about it before, where mistakes will pretty much doom your chances.
And that's been the case for Thurston. I think they started slow in a lot of games, and finally got going and played the second half pretty even. But unfortunately, it was a pattern for them in a few games this year. So we'll get reconnected with Thurston next year. Unfortunately, they're done for this year.
Good luck next year to Justin Stark and his crew, and I'm sure that they'll be up and ready to go next year. But as exciting as that game was, the score doesn't indicate, but there was a lot of excitement at the Westview 41 South Eugene 6 game up at Westview.
Another Lane County Eugene team heading up to Portland for a game.
Yeah, they were. South Eugene just had problems from the get-go. They were down 28-0 at half. Heck, they had a streaker.
Oh boy!
And Coach Miller was ejected over he wasn't the streaker.
Okay, those things aren't related. Just to be clear.
No, just to be clear, that's not related. He was ejected over a face mask call.
Okay.
So things just did not go well for South Eugene. Their quarterback was sacked 4 times. He was under constant pressure all night. But that Westview quarterback had probably the game of his season. On Friday, Austin Brigsby, I think his name is.
Brisby.
Yeah. He hit 10 receivers. He had 300 yards throwing the ball. So he just had one heck of a game, and Westview was pretty excited about the win. So too bad for South Eugene. They end the season 2-8. They got those first 2 wins at the beginning of the season over a couple of 5A teams, but we were hoping it would give them some momentum going into the season, and that just didn't happen for them. But I am positive, I've said it here today, that Chris Miller will have South Eugene back and back playing some solid football here very soon.
It's a process, and it's not going to happen in 1 year. They've already, broke the streak of winless, not getting any wins. They got 2 this year. Now the next thing they need to work on is getting a win in league for South Eugene. So they'll get there. And good season for South Eugene. They've made some steps in the right direction.
They have, and they're a young team, so they're going to bring back a lot of players. And as long as they can buy into that program, and Chris Miller's I've seen him talk about it before, is getting those players to change their attitudes, the culture.
Yeah.
And that is a process that's going to take a little bit for him, and I wish him a lot of luck because I know that high school fans in the Eugene Springfield area would like to see him do well. How about 4A?
I got some 4A scores. Cottage Grove had a bye, so they're ready to roll next week. Siuslaw 49, Sweet Home 21, Central 64, Junction City 27. Unfortunately, Junction City will conclude their season. And Elmira is still in it. They beat Mazama 42-24. They had played Mazama earlier in the year.
Yeah, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and Elmira's moving along. Bo Heiberger had a good game, 3 touchdowns, 1 passing, 1 running, and a pick 6, I believe. So we'll have some time to talk with Elmira coach Jason Hattie coming up. That'll be real nice. So Elmira, Cottage Grove, and Siuslaw still in it for local 4A teams.
That's great.
Well, Marvin, are you thinking you're ready for our trivia Stump Marvin question?
I am. I did. I hit it out of the park last week.
You hit a grand slam, and I have to tell you though, Marvin, I don't want to dampen your enthusiasm and you're patting yourself on the back. A couple of our listeners, our loyal listeners, came up to me and said that trivia question for Marvin was too easy.
No way.
Yeah, a couple did, but they were impressed that you took it a step further and gave 4 or 5 other details that I was going to mention, but you already beat me to it, so they were impressed with that. So good job for you. But let's go ahead with this edition of Stump Marvin's Trivia Time, where we try to stump Marvin with a trivia question.
It's that time where we gather around LaneCountySportsOnline.com and slap on your thinking helmet. Time to Stump Marvin.
And here it is, Marvin. Can you name 5?
Oh, no.
And you don't have to name 5. Let's just say, how many can you name? Local high school players who have played in the Super Bowl. I'll give you a little bit of time to think about that while I repeat the question and give you some background. Local high school players, not Ducks, but local high school players who played in the Super Bowl. Gary Haliski emailed me this question, so you can blame him and if you don't get it right. But and he also gave me the answer. I didn't know this. I relied on Gary for this. But there are 5 that Gary.
Wow.
Gary was able to get 5 of those within about 10 seconds. So I've stalled for longer than 10. You haven't gotten any yet.
I know. I have. There's only one I can think of, and it was from the trivia question last week. Russ Francis.
Okay, very good. But see, this is how you do stuff: is that you start slow and then you logically figure things out. You're right. Russ Francis is one. Pleasant Hill.
Wow.
High school.
I grew up in Douglas County, and I can only think of the players from Douglas County right now.
That won't help you today.
I know.
Although you can mention them, it might make you look really smart.
Well, Troy Polamalu.
Okay, yeah, that's right. I hadn't thought of that. Okay,
yeah.
but I'm sorry, that doesn't count. I'll give you a hint.
Okay.
1, 2, and I only know this because I'm looking at the notes that you can't see. 1, 2, 3 of these guys are from Sheldon.
Wow, Sheldon.
Yeah, and one of them goes way back.
Oh. Okay.
I'll give you a few more seconds here.
Did Chris Miller play in the Super Bowl?
He's not one of the answers I have. I don't believe he did.
No, I don't think he did either. I just thought maybe he was a backup quarterback on a team or something.
One is fairly recent from Willamette High School.
Oh.
Was a defensive back.
Oh, yeah. And I can't ever remember it. Quentin?
Yes. Yeah, we're going to give you credit for that. Quentin, I believe it's Michael? Or Michael, or Mikkel.
I think it's
from
Michael.
Willamette High School, also Boise State and the Philadelphia Eagles. So that's 2. We'll give you credit for that.
Okay.
Russ Francis, Quentin Michael.
Wow.
Local high school players from the Eugene area who have played in the Super Bowl.
So the last 3 are from Sheldon.
Last 3 are Sheldon, and I can just fire them off if you don't think you'll get them.
I give up.
Okay, so 2 out of 5 is really good. I would have got 0, Marvin.
Okay.
Todd Christensen.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I actually played in a father-son baseball game one time with Todd. He's a great guy.
These trivia questions always lead to some additional trivia of some sort. BYU graduate and Sheldon grad.
Yep.
Mike
played for the Oakland Raiders, by the way.
Correct. Yeah. Mike Walter.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Sheldon grad, U of O, defensive end, 49ers. Okay.
Yep.
And John Jacua, I believe he's a local Eugene attorney. Went to Lewis and Clark in Portland, played for George Allen at the Redskins, Sheldon graduate. Also, again, Gary Haliski. Well, he goes back a little further than you and I do.
He's old enough to go way back.
Yeah.
So, wow, that's a great trivia question.
Yeah. So there could be more, and if anybody finds any more, send us an email, give me a call.
Yeah.
That's our Stump Marvin, and I think we didn't officially stump you. You got 2 out of 5. That's pretty good, Marvin.
Well, it's not too bad, but gosh, I wish I could have done a lot more with that. I just, again, not growing up in this area, it's hard. I did watch Mike Walter play when he played for the Ducks, so I should have known that one.
You got 2 out of 5, and you didn't get any time to think about it. I basically gave you a minute, so that's good.
Okay.
Well, let's go ahead and go straight into our interview with Elmira coach Jason Hattie. This is Prep Talk. Chris Park here, and I'm speaking with Elmira head football coach Jason Hattie. Jason, thank you again for taking the time to talk with us this morning on Prep Talk.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me on here. I really appreciate it.
Well, first of all, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the playoff game last week against Mazama. If you could maybe just review that game a little bit for our listeners. Playing game, Elmira wins at home 42-24. Can you just tell us a little bit about how that game went? Were you pleased with the outcome and some things that you did well?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, we knew going into that game during the week when we were preparing for Mazama that they're a very physical team because we faced them earlier in the season where we beat them 28-26. And when we got done with that game, as a matter of fact, when we got done with our league games, we looked back and thought that they were probably the most physical team that we've played. So when we saw that we were going to get a chance to play them again, we were a little, hesitant, a little worried about having to play them again because we thought they were so physical. And so we just really prepared for that all week long as far as them being a physical kind of grind-out game, two running teams. And, and then when the game came that night and, our kids played really well. I thought Mazama is a well-coached team, and their kids fought hard as well. And really what it came down to was they had 3 or 4 turnovers, and we were able to capitalize on all of those. So besides just, our normal offense, getting down the field and scoring some points, we were able to get some turnovers defensively and to take advantage of those. And I think that's really what helped us out in the outcome of our game, besides the fact that our kids just played really tough all game long.
Okay. Well, who were a couple players for your team, Elmira Falcons, that impressed you with that game last week and maybe so far this year?
Well, as far as the game goes on Friday, I mean, probably, our best all-around player, which if anybody knows anything about our team and you ask them, who they think our best all-around player is, that's Bo Heiberger, and he plays inside linebacker for us, and he starts at halfback. And linebacker-wise, as far as defense, I mean, he probably had his best game that he did all year. We've been really kind of waiting for Bo to have a breakout game, and we know what he's capable of doing, and he really stepped up to the plate. Was in on 18 tackles defensively, and
fantastic.
And then offensively, our fullback Gary Yount had a great game. Rushed for over 100 yards, caught a couple passes for somewhere around 30 yards, and really helped us out. And he's a big physical kid too. So, we really rode the coattails of Gary, I believe, in that game, just trying to grind it out, get down the field and score some points. And as far as the whole season goes, I think that kind of like the unsung heroes of our squad is really our offensive and defensive line. Those guys don't get enough recognition as far as what they do day in and day out, and really opening up holes offensively for our backs to get through, and defensively, trying to take on, multiple guys to let our Ds and linebackers run free and get downhill and make tackles.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I agree. Sometimes those guys working hard in the trenches, they do a lot of things that go unseen to typical fans, but for fans with a fine eye, they see the work they do, and that's neat that you've got a group of guys that are willing to work hard and do that.
Absolutely.
Can you maybe give us a couple players in 4A and in the Sky-M League, in particular Sky-M League, that have impressed you so far, not from your team, so far this year?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've had the chance to come up against some pretty good teams, I think, this year, both in the off season or in the early season, non-league and in our league ourselves, and I'm not always great with names, but Philomath, we played them early in the year, and they have a receiver that is, just a phenomenal athlete, and he gave us lots of problems. I want to say his last name is Baumberger or something along that lines. I'm probably totally butchering it, but just a really great athlete.
Mm-hmm.
If anyone knows anything about Philomath, they know who he is and what his name is. But and as far as our league goes, I mean, the quarterback from Cottage Grove, Hittner, I mean, he's a great quarterback. I mean, I would say he's probably the best in 4A, and Sweet Home within our league also has a linebacker. Last name is Horner that is right up there with our guy, Bo Heiberger, who ended up getting Defensive Player of the League. I think that
Great.
Horner from Sweet Home is that caliber of a linebacker as well, and he also plays offensive line and is just an all-around athlete. So, and within our league, those are, I would say, two pretty standout athletes. And then the receiver from Philomath is, I mean, the kid is just, he's just a kind of a throwback type of a player. He's tall, he's big, he's fast, catches the ball well, and he gets down the field. And then, of course, playing Scott Booth this week, and
Right.
got really good athletes as well. And they got a quarterback that threw 37 touchdowns last year, and he's back this year, and I think he's thrown over 20 touchdowns already. So, we got our work cut out for us. We've watched him on film already, and he's a good athlete as well. So.
Okay, excellent. This is Prep Talk, and we're talking with Jason Hattie. He's the head football coach for the Elmira Falcons. Elmira 7-3 on the year. This week, first round playoff game against Scappoose on the road at Scappoose. Scappoose has a couple of losses. They have two losses to Central and Banks, two really pretty good teams. You touched on it a little bit about what you might expect from Scappoose and what you know about them. They seem pretty diverse. Run the ball a bit, pass the ball a bit, got a quarterback that can throw, but also has a few rushing touchdowns. Can you give us a little bit of background on Scappoose? Not necessarily a scouting report, but what can our listeners expect coming up for this game between Elmira and Scappoose?
Yeah, I think it's going to be kind of, who stops who. We run the ball quite a bit, and they throw the ball. That's primarily what they do. They're probably a little bit more balanced than what we are. But they're well coached. I've known Sean McNabb, their head football coach up there, for a number of years, from when I was at Junction City, and both coaching against them and playing against his teams when I was a player at Junction City. And they're a really well-coached team, and they've been running a version of the offense that they are running this year for a number of years. And basically what it's based around is they want to throw the ball, and they got some guys that can catch really well and get downfield. And, of course, I talked about their quarterback, that he's a good quarterback. I think he's an above-average quarterback, and then they run the ball just enough to kind of keep you honest, where you can't just pin your ears back and try to get a great pass rush on the quarterback, and because you got to always be wary of the zone run, which they like to run as well, and a little bit of the option off of that. So it's going to be a dogfight, I believe. And we got to travel up there. We're going to be at their place. They always have big supportive crowds up there. They got great support up there in Scappoose. They got a great coaching staff, and they got good athletes on their team. And we're hoping on the week to go up there and give them a good game and hopefully come out on top.
Well, it sounds like a great opportunity, a great environment to head up to Scappoose. How long has Coach McNabb been up there at Scappoose? Do you happen to know?
I don't know exactly how long he's been there, but
at least 10 years or more, I'm thinking.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay,
yeah. I've been coaching for over 15 years now, and he's been there as long as I've been coaching.
Okay, great. Okay, one more question here. This is Prep Talk, and we're talking with Elmira head football coach Jason Hattie. The Elmira Falcons are heading up to Scappoose for a playing game on Friday. Last question here, Coach, before we turn you loose. What do you think are maybe a couple keys to the game this Friday for the Falcons? You mentioned minimizing turnovers and trying to run the ball. Maybe anything else, or expand on that for a little bit here?
Yeah, our kids just need to continue to play the type of football that they've been playing for the last 3 or 4 weeks, and just be physical. I think that especially in the last 2 weeks against Mazama and against Junction City, we've been preaching being physical because we're fairly physical teams. And I think that we have the ability to go up there in another physical game. And, as long as we can, at least have boost to punt the ball sometimes. They're giving up touchdowns down the field when they throw the ball, which is no secret to anybody. We have struggled with off and on throughout the year.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're able to overcome that and weather the storm a little bit and just get things rolling offensively and do what we do well, which is run the ball, then hopefully that gives us a little bit of an edge. And like I said before, we come out on top. And if we do, it's going to be a win for us because, like I said before, it's a well-coached team. They do things very well. And, they finished second in their league and were ranked high enough to get a first-round bye and get a higher seed because they're ranked in Penn State because how well they have done stuff here. So
Yeah.
It's going to be a dogfight for us, and I think the kids are up to the task. As long as we just with our game plan, I think there's a good chance of coming out on top.
Okay, well, this has been Prep Talk. We're talking with Elmira head football coach Jason Hattie. Thank you again for taking the time to speak with us on Prep Talk, and good luck to your team on Friday.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And welcome back to Prep Talk. Chris Park and Marvin Hammerschmith here on Prep Talk Eugene. That was a nice interview with Elmira coach Jason Hattie. I kind of messed up on his name there, Marvin. A little nervous there getting the interview done. But thank you, Coach Hattie, for that interview on a peek into Elmira. They got to go up to Scappoose. Scappoose is a good team. They've only got 2 losses this year to Central and Banks. Banks, one of the better teams out there. So Elmira's going to have their hands full, I think.
Yeah, Central's a pretty good team, too, to lose to. Strong program up there. So
yeah,
best of luck to them this week. They're going to have their work cut out for them. But I tell you, last week they seemed to put a complete game together. So hopefully they can carry that into this week as well.
Yeah, Coach Hattie has a lot of respect for the Scappoose folks there. So he's hopefully getting his team ready, and good luck to Elmira. Let's talk a little bit about reviewing some of the other playoff games that we didn't get to. I'll start with some 5A games. Churchill 34, Park Rose 21. We are going to have an interview with Churchill coach Daryl Mel coming up, but we've seen Churchill do this before, haven't we, Marvin? Go
Absolutely.
up and get a win in the playoff round, round 1.
Yeah, I can remember 2 years ago, Wilsonville, one of the premier teams that year. Churchill was low on the seeding. They went up there and just pounded them.
Yeah.
I mean, Wilsonville was not in that game at all. I remember seeing video of that game, and the Wilsonville players were just totally flabbergasted at how well Churchill beat them. Last year, they made another run at it. They went up and defeated Milwaukee.
At Milwaukee, yeah. It was 2010 they went up to Wilsonville. I only know this because I've got my notes and you just use your brain. But Wilsonville, my notes say, was the number 2 seed that year in 2010.
They were.
And then last year, Churchill goes up to Milwaukee and wins at Milwaukee 41-20.
Yeah.
So
and then they turned around and gave Redmond, who was at that time projected to possibly get into the finals last year.
Last year, right? Redmond was number 1.
Yeah, and they gave him a really hard time in the snow over in Redmond, and it was a close game all the way through, but then ended up losing that game. But they're one of those teams that really gets up for the playoffs.
Yeah.
And so anything can happen. Now they have drawn the number 1 seed for the next round.
Right. What team is that? It's some team up from a Portland suburb, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, somewhere where they shoot bow and arrows or something.
But before we get to that, let's talk. I'll give a little review of the Park Rose game. Churchill 34, Park Rose 21. The Churchill defense held Park Rose to 25 yards of total offense. Of course, Park Rose was without their quarterback, who was injured. This quarterback is responsible, I think his name was Boland, responsible for 3,000 yards of total offense. So
wow.
That probably was a factor. But you know what? Churchill can relate. They're missing Tyler Reed the whole year.
Yeah.
A great running back. So they know what it's like to not have
do.
a key guy, and they're without their own key guy,
That's
and
right.
they still get it done. Unfortunately, they did throw 2 interceptions that were returned for touchdowns that Park Rose scored against Churchill. Otherwise, only 1 offensive touchdown. The Churchill running game was stellar.
Well, we should ask Coach Mehl if he's going to give Frank Geske from Marist a call, because Frank is very familiar with the Sherwood team and what they do. So, but moving on, Springfield, of course, had a bye. They're again in the ranked, I think, number 3.
Mm-hmm.
They're in the top 8. Had a bye last week, but Marist went up to Wilson High School, again going up to the Portland area.
Yeah, lots of teams last week from Eugene went up to Portland.
Yeah. Marist defeated Wilson 48-6 and just dominated at the line of scrimmage. Andrew Park had 235 yards rushing, scored on an 82-yard run. And, you know, looking at the Friday night high school football program had a helicopter view, and you could just see the size of the holes the running backs were running through. It was just amazing. And they dominated on the defensive line side as well.
Yeah.
So just a great game for Marist to get started in the playoffs. And, you know, it's been a while since they've had a play-in game.
Yeah.
But maybe this is what it took to get them going, and we'll see. But Marist, we'll talk about Marist's playoff next round coming up here. They're going to have some work cut out for them, but I think that if they play as well as they did last week, I think they're going to give Roosevelt a hard time. So
I've got some 3A scores. Pleasant Hill 59, Creswell 7, and Pleasant Hill will make the playoffs.
They did.
Because Blanchette beat Harrisburg 7-6. It was a surprise, and there was that complex, how will Pleasant Hill get in? Remember last week when we had Pleasant Hill coach Kirk Miller, he explained that, and I still don't remember it, but somehow Pleasant Hill is going to be in the playoffs, which is great.
Well, I saw that Saturday morning, and I texted you. Well,
that's right.
Well, Coach got his wish, and they're in the playoffs. So congratulations to Pleasant Hill, and again, hopefully they can use this as a springboard to make something happen. So in 2A's final week of the regular season, Oakland 46, Oak Ridge 20, Monroe 52, North Douglas 6. So the playoffs will begin for 2A next week for both Friday and Saturday, since there's a lot of travel involved in 2A. And Oakland is ranked real high up there again, so Oakland, the defending state champions, could possibly make another run at it. So how about 1A, Chris?
In 1A, Siletz Valley 70, Crow 14, Triangle Lake 69, Mohawk 24, Yoncalla 82, McKenzie 42, and Lowell 82, Mapleton 14. Look at all those points. Lowell, Yoncalla, and Triangle Lake are all going to be in the 1A state playoffs, and Lowell has a chance to break the state scoring record.
Yep.
And at this rate, they probably will do that, so that's an exciting story.
Who holds that record, Chris?
I know the big school record was held by Sheldon the last couple of years. I don't know what the 1A record. I would guess Camas Valley.
Yeah,
Camas Valley scores a whole bunch of points over the last few years, and I believe they're like a 2 or 3 time defending state champions.
Yeah, Camas Valley does, I believe, hold the 1A scoring record.
Yeah. So we'll keep our eyes on that, and this might be a good time, Marvin, for us to take a break and go straight into our interview with Churchill football coach Darrell Mel.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, let's do that. We'll be right back. Coming up is Daryl Mel interview, Churchill football coach. Stay tuned for more Prep Talk. Prep Talk, Marvin Hammerschmith, Chris Park. We're speaking with Daryl Mel. He's the head football coach at Churchill High School. On the phone here this evening. Coach Mel, thank you again for taking the time to speak with us here on Prep Talk.
My pleasure.
First of all, can you give us a little background about yourself? You're a former Oregon Duck football player. Maybe tell our listeners a little bit about your background, how long you've been coaching, and how long you've been at Churchill.
Okay, well, I played at Oregon through 76, 73 through 76, and then I got a job at Cascade High School. Coached there as an assistant coach to Carl Elliott for 8 years, and then I became the head coach at Elmira High School in 86, and went to 2000, I think 15 years, and then I came over to Churchill and was an assistant for 2 or 3 years while my boys played, and then I became the head coach, and I think I've been there probably 11 years, something like that. And that brings us to the present day.
Well, hey, Coach, can you describe your team for us using 2 or 3 adjectives?
You know, young, hardworking, inexperienced.
Okay. Sometimes that goes with young and inexperienced, doesn't it?
Yeah, they're kind of, but they work really hard. So, I'll go to battle with them anytime. That's probably my favorite Churchill team, not necessarily athletically, but as far as working hard and every day, practice-wise, it's been a real pleasure to work with these guys.
Well, along those lines, your senior running back, Tyler Reed, missed the entire season with an injury, yet you've had a host of kids step up. Tell us about some of the leaders of the Churchill Lancers for this season.
We lost our best lineman in the first game, and we got him back since he had meniscus, and they took care of that, and he's gotten back the last couple games, and so we're excited about having him playing again. We lost our best running back with Tyler Reed, so Jonathan Moran has stepped in and done a nice job. We have a young quarterback, Justin Kearney, that is going to be outstanding. He's going through the bumps and grinds of being a sophomore, trying to lead us the read option, and it's a challenge. And then we've got our two inside linebackers, Anyway, he's our inside linebacker. And then, let's see, we have a wide receiver that's a sophomore that's a stud for us, but, we just got a good, solid, young, inexperienced football team that like to play together.
Yeah, that's great.
More than that, I guess I could have a Sherwood team that is one of the best teams I've ever seen on tape. But I don't know if they behave themselves like my guys do, and it's been a pleasure coaching my kids.
Well, last week you guys went up to Park Rose and got a nice 34-21 win over Park Rose. You guys ran the ball very well. Had a little bit of a problem with your passing game with 2 interceptions returned for touchdowns. But tell us a little bit about the game from your perspective on the sidelines.
It was we changed out our quarterback. I started our senior quarterback, kind of turned over the apple cart and shook it around a little bit and set it back on its wheels, and trying to get our offense inspired to do something, get them mad at me, and so forth and so on. And that kind of failed, so I put Justin back in. The senior quarterback threw a couple of pick sixes, and just kind of went down. We got up 14-0, and then all heck broke loose in the second quarter. So we went back to our normal thing, and we ended up pulling the game out. But I've never been up in a game, and I don't know for a fact that this is the truth, but we were down 21-14 at halftime, and somebody told me they had -6 yards of total offense. So I've never had a team score 21 points and only having -6 yards of offense. So it's kind of surprising to me.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. Well, you mentioned them, but next up is Sherwood. They've got 1 loss in the last 4 seasons. But you guys have a bit of a reputation for stirring the pot and pulling upsets. What can you share with us about your impression of Sherwood?
I think for probably in my situation, not that it helps it does help quite a bit in preparation for Sherwood, because I actually ran wing T offense for 23 years, and so at Elmira and at Cascade, we were all wing T, and so it gives me I have a pretty good idea of what they're doing, and but however, when I coached it, I didn't feel like anybody could stop us. So unless there were better players, and that's when we got stopped. We're going to do all we can. We're going to hopefully play as hard as we can, and not be totally intimidated by this team. They've got, we had a meeting Monday, and I asked how many people watch film, and 90% of our guys raised their hand, and I went, uh-oh, wish they wouldn't have watched so much film. Sherwood is an awful good team, and they can, on film, they're really impressive.
Well, give us a couple of keys to the game.
I ran the defense at our school, so my key is As far as the defensive people, we got to make them drive the football to score a touchdown. And instead of, I took notes on the Putnam game, and I think it was 41-0, and they'd run 19 offensive plays. So, if we're going to have any chance at all, we've got to make them, our goal is to make them run 10 plays before they get a touchdown.
Yeah.
Big, but, it's like Oregon. 2 plays, touchdown. And we've got to try to make them drive the football field to get a touchdown. And, I don't know if that's going to be possible, but that's one of our goals defensively. And then offensively, we're overmatched, and we've got to have some good things go positive for us. Sherwood is more than a handful for us. So we've got to, we're going to go up and compete and see what we can do, but they're fully loaded this year, it looks like to me. And, we dealt with them in the Linfield football camp a few years in a row, and they were very impressive 5-6 years ago. So things don't change much, and I think this might be his best team he's ever had.
Coach Mel, not counting your team, can you give us just who you think the top 3 teams in 5A are this year? Who are the top?
Well, without a doubt, Sherwood's number 1. My son coaches at West Albany, and they played them in, I think, week 2 or week 3, and that was, they were more than West Albany can handle. I think my son's team, West Albany's a good football team.
Mm-hmm.
I would be concerned with Mountain View as well.
Okay.
They're kind of, we don't know over on this side of the hill. We don't know what really goes on over there, and they play some 6A teams and done pretty well. So I would be concerned with them, even though I don't think last week was a real good outing for them. Ashland's a good football team, but I don't think they compare with Sherwood, and Springfield's a good football team, but Sherwood's out there by themselves, I think, and the rest of us got to battle to, get into the championship game with them, I think, the rest of the groups.
Well, I think that's a solid top 3. Thank you, Coach.
Yeah. So, being in the Midwestern League, can you give us your impression of 2 or 3 players, not from your team, that have impressed you so far this season?
Well, the Montgomery kid from Ashland is a stud. I think we were at an all-league meeting, and he's our defensive player of the year. Plays linebacker for him, really a good physical kid that can run. I would say he would be right in there. And then Trevor Watson from Springfield, their quarterback, is the real deal. He's a sophomore, and I think he's the one that makes Springfield go. They have a couple other really good players, but he's the one that really makes Springfield the team they are offensively.
Oh, absolutely. Well, that's all the questions we have for you today, Coach. We sure appreciate you taking the time to talk with Prep Talk today.
Absolutely.
And good luck this week going up to Sherwood. We really hope you guys pull up the upset and bring home a win.
Well, thank you very much. We're going to give it our best shot.
Well, thanks, Coach.
Okay, thank you.
Coach Mel, we're just want to say thank you again. Super job. Okay. Bye. Sounded like he was Welcome back to Prep Talk. Chris Park and Marvin Hammerschmith. We just concluded an interview with Churchill football coach Darrell Mel. That was a good interview. He looks like he's getting his team ready to go up and face Sherwood. It's a tall task, Marvin, but someone's got to do it, right?
Yeah, Sherwood, the #1 ranked team in the state according to Max Preps. So,
all levels, all classifications.
All classifications.
One loss in the last 4 years.
Yeah, incredible. They do a great job, but the way Churchill goes in the playoffs, again, I think that if anybody's going to give Sherwood a hard time, and someone always does in the playoffs, they give them a hard time, it's going to be Churchill. So best of luck to Coach Mehl and his players, and hopefully he can surprise everybody and pull out the win.
One of the things I wanted to make a point of after that interview with Churchill coach Daryl Mel is it's just my opinion, but it seems like some of the first-round matchups, especially in 4A and 5A, it seems like there's some more interesting games. I mean, I'm really excited to see some of the 4A matchups and some of the 5A matchups as opposed to years past when there were just a bunch of blowouts.
Right, and we're going to talk about those games coming up. In fact, let's just jump right into it right now. Sheldon in 6A, Sheldon, of course, had a bye last week. They're going to host Lincoln. From what I've seen, I highly doubt Sheldon has too hard of a time with Lincoln. They should get their first playoff win this week, and good luck to the Irish.
Yeah, and I think that bye is probably really good for Sheldon to get some kids rested, before they get ready to take on Lincoln. I don't think there's any common opponents there between Lincoln and Sheldon this year, so you can't really get any sense for that. But I think Sheldon should do what they do, and we'll see how that one goes. In 5A, Franklin is at Springfield. Franklin quarterback Aiden Markham last week, 27 out of 35 for passing, 368 yards. 5 touchdowns, and he also rushed for a touchdown and 128 yards in their win against the Dows last week, but he did throw 2 interceptions. So Franklin's got a dynamic quarterback. Springfield will host them next week.
Marist is at Roosevelt. They get another return trip to the Portland area. Since 1944, Roosevelt has had 10 playoff games, winning just 1. On the contrary, Marist this will be their 76th playoff game since the school opened in 1968.
Oh boy,
they've won 48 of them. So, playoff experience I think does come into play. Roosevelt's got a great quarterback. They've got some big guys on the line this year. A couple of really big guys. So not to say that Marist is going to go up. This is going to be a cakewalk, but I like Marist's chances, I think that Marist might get themselves on a roll here, so we'll see.
All indications from folks I've talked to think this could be one of the better first-round games in 5A. It could be a really close game, so that looks exciting.
Yeah, I think, and because of the Roosevelt story, I think there's going to be a large crowd out there at this game to support. I think this is certainly the first time in a really long time they've hosted a playoff game.
Yeah, if ever, maybe. We'd have to
look that one up.
Get our stats guy on that.
Yeah, but so I'm fairly certain that the folks supporting the Rough Riders.
Yeah, I love that name.
I do too. I think that they're going to come out in droves. So it's going to be a great atmosphere.
4A, Cottage Grove will host Seaside. Seaside is 8-2. They're a pretty good 4A team.
They are a really good 4A team. Cottage Grove has a couple losses. We've talked about them all year, that those losses came to out-of-state teams. They traveled to Hawaii. They played a really good California team.
Right.
So, and really in the rankings, as far as the OSA rankings go, they haven't really held it against Cottage Grove.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a really good game.
I think so too. And Seaside might be a little bit of a secret. They only lost to Banks and Scappoose, who are also in the playoffs.
And 2 powerhouses there.
Yeah, Elmira at Scappoose. They only have losses to Banks and Central. So, and Central is a perennial 4A playoff team. Will be 5A next year. Siuslaw at Gladstone. They got to go up to the Portland area. Gladstone is 7-2. They've only lost to Roosevelt.
Right.
And a loss to Philomath, who's probably the best 4A team.
Best 4A team out there.
4A playoffs, I'm especially excited about. There's going to be some great first-round games in 4A for our local teams.
So, Chris, how about 3A?
In 3A, we have Pleasant Hill will have to play Cascade Christian, and if I believe, I think they played them earlier this year, Marvin. So that's a redo.
They did. They played them earlier this year and lost 41-14. So, not to say that they've got their work cut out for them this week, but again, that's playoffs, and you build some excitement about getting into the playoffs. And they've seen them before. It's my experience has been that seeing a team the second time in the playoffs, sometimes the tables are turned, and I always use the Mountain View against Sherwood, which was Sherwood's last loss in the last 4 years, I think, was to Mountain View in that state title game. They blew Mountain View out in that first game they played in the regular season, and Mountain View came back and beat them in the state championship. So anything's possible.
Yeah, and I always get Cascade Christian and Santee Ann Christian mixed up. I have to stop and think. Cascade Christian is down by Medford.
Correct.
Harrisburg will host Jervis. Those are your 3A games.
In 2A, Lost River is going to go play at Monroe, and Oakland is playing at Kennedy. Again, those teams being in the first round, we'll see how they do and give an update next week.
Yeah, I might try to get out to that Lost River at Monroe game. That one's going to be Saturday afternoon. So you're still deciding which game you're going to be going to Friday night, aren't you?
I am still deciding.
Yeah, there's still a lot of good choices. In 1A, Lowell will host Condon/Wheeler. Sherman is at Triangle Lake, and Yoncall is at St. Paul. And Elkton, not in Lane County, but still close enough to Eugene area, will travel to Adrian.
Our friend Gary Haliski mentioned Elkton when we had him on the show.
That's correct.
They have one of the best football atmospheres in high school football. Right there along Highway 138 on the way to Reedsport. You can just stop. And there's a restaurant there. I'm going to give a shout out to Arlene's. Great place to go have a burger before the game. So.
Well, that's important, I think.
Absolutely. We've talked about food before.
Well, we do. Show. And we talk about nice places to watch games. And Elkton is right there. They've got some nice trees, and it's right along the
Umpqua River.
That'd be the river, the Umpqua. I was trying to think of which river it was. You're getting credit for Stump Marvin on getting that right, Marvin.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap up our show. Make sure to tune in for our next show, and we'll have hopefully an interview with one of the coaches in the area that's still in the playoff hunt. Check our Twitter account
at Prep Talk Eugene, and our YouTube channel is Prep Talk Eugene.
For the schedule and for accessing shows, I'm Marvin Hammerschmith.
I'm Chris Park.
And you've been listening to Prep Talk. Until next time, so long.